So we need, well, what we need is to launch Flight Simulator. Okay, put the helmet on. Deal with this wire. Since I'm not using AirLink, hopefully you guys can hear me. Compositor says that it's picking up audio, so got my flight sim controls here, but I gotta use my virtual controller to select. I would have already had this queued up, except that taking it with Oculus, because it has the feature that puts the headset to sleep when you take it off, it kind of wreaks havoc with Flight Simulator because it stops detecting the headset, and then when you put it back on, it says you don't have the headset connected because it's not designed to work that way. So what we're gonna do, is it actually launching? I can't remember which monitor. Is monitor 2? Nope, it's monitor 1. Monitor 1 is actually monitor 2 physically, and monitor 2 is actually monitor 1. So I'm just putting virtual monitor because the way VR works with Flight Sim is it's like a weird hybrid. Hopefully the issue with I was having when I got this first working yesterday, when the headset moves, if there's weird judder on the edges of the screen in the compositor, I can't see it in the headset because it's not happening here. Not sure what's causing that. I'm guessing it's because this compositor actually takes both the left eye and right eye images and tries to merge them. And I'm guessing there might be some synchronization issues with that under Windows 11. Because there were all kinds of other issues that had to be fixed just to get this thing working, including the fact that just having HDR enabled on your desktop will cause the Oculus to freak out. So, welcome to the big empty room while we wait for this to load. I mean, I shouldn't complain about the load times of Flight Simulator considering what it's actually having to load. There's a lot of data there. I think my Flight Simulator install is ballooned up to somewhere around 200 gigs, including the photogrammetry cache I have set up on it. It's about 150 gigs of like base files, and then another 50 gigs for photogrammetry caching. Which is, for those not familiar, Flight Simulator uses satellite mapping data from around the world paired with AI to essentially any area you could possibly want to go in the world. The AI examines the photographs, determines what are buildings, what might look like trees, which is, why the maps aren't perfect because, it would be impossible to have essentially people hand make bespoke models for every location on the face of the earth. So the AI generates buildings based on what it can tell from the photograph, like the approximate color. It uses a prefabbed building with an approximate match to that color, the roof shape and size. They pair this with another program called OpenStreetMaps, which is a open source GPS mapping software, which has a feature that allows users to also input building data from nearby buildings, including a building's height. Which has led to some interesting things. When the game launched, there was a building in Perth, Australia, I think, where someone had misplaced a decimal when inputting the height of a building. So in the middle of a residential block, there was a 5,000 foot high, miniature high rise that had the footprint of a house, but just, you know, skyrocketed into the sky like a giant monolith. But anyhow, here we are. Okay, so now we can enter VR mode. So now we go into another big empty room. And we center ourselves. Okay. So now we go to CY3, which is not here. We're zooming into the wrong location. CMY3. And we have our top rudder 103 ultralight, which we're going to be flying. We're going to use live weather and time conditions, live traffic and live players. Let's see if there's anything going on at the airport. I did hear some people flying around earlier. No activity at the airport, which is not, you know, uncommon. Since it's a regional airport, most of the planes flying don't have to file flight plans, since they will be flying below the ceiling required for that, including us. As a matter of fact, ultralight plane, even though in the sim I will hear radio chatter, this thing wouldn't actually have a radio. It doesn't have an altimeter. Basically, I have a voltmeter, or a temperature for the exhaust, a speedometer, airspeed indicator, I should say. And this little gauge here just can tell me either engine RPMs or the temperature. I'm not getting audio. Oh, you know what? I haven't set up audio mirroring. So let's do this and hope the noise filtering is good enough. Because otherwise this is going to get real annoying. There we go. Still no audio. There we go. Okay, so we are taking off. We are facing west. I didn't actually check which runway I had. It only has one runway per se. Well, actually, no, it has two, I think, at this airport. There's a north-south facing runway, I believe. It's not used as much. But, yeah, the nice thing about the ultralight is it has a very low rotational speed. So as you can see, we lifted very early. Can actually generate lift at about 30 knots, but the problem is like, as you can see, we're going a little bit sideways here. We're going very sideways. What's up with that? We're not flying straight at all. I'm almost wondering if I've got rudder input when I'm not supposed to. Let's disconnect this, reconnect it, make sure all the inputs are neutral. No, I've got full rudder. No, I think we're just flying at a really weird angle. Kind of new to the whole ultralight thing. Let's turn into the wind and see what happens. There we go. Still seem to be doing a bit of a side shuffle. Let's recenter ourselves. There we go. Oh, you know what? It was a centering thing with the VR. I've never seen it. I've seen the headset be like sort of like this as default, but I've never seen it actually affect the facing of the aircraft. That's weird. So here we are, airborne in an ultralight. So basically, control surfaces for this aircraft does not have rudders, only flaps. Or it does have rudders, sorry. It doesn't have, and has ailerons. It doesn't have flaps, I should say. So landings are interesting in this thing, especially considering that this is a short takeoff and landing aircraft. Its rotational speed is only about 30 knots, but its stall speed is also around there too. So cutting the throttle and gliding in can be interesting because you basically have to, unlike most planes where you want to keep your nose up when you're touching the runway, you kind of have to push this one down a little bit. I mean, you got a bit of room in the front, but because otherwise you will reach stall speed before you lose enough altitude to touch down. So you kind of have to force this thing onto the ground because it basically wants to fly right up until the point where it you reach a aerodynamic stall. What did you say my altitude was? 1,300 feet. So as you can see, the photogrammetry stuff, like that roundabout there, in reality is a large grass mound where they've filled it with trees, and that's because it can, from the topography data, it knows that there is something there because there's the mound that they put in roundabouts to help reduce accidents from cars coming across it. But it doesn't know that it's just the ground. It just sees green and a lift, and the AI basically is like, yeah, that's a bunch of trees. So you see weird stuff like that. Like some gardens are, instead represented by patches of trees. And of course, based on the greenery and stuff, it just randomly inserts trees. So you'll see a lot of these properties have more trees in them than they probably actually have in real life. Even in major cities, you see a lot more trees than you would actually see. It looks nice, and once you get to a decent height, it's hard to tell how accurate it actually is. Also, some of the satellite data came from, because the way they did the satellite data from this, different photographs come from different time periods. Some of the months, some possibly years apart. Like, for example, that sand lot that I'm looking at right now is a hotel now. And that's actually from, looks like when they were building it, and judging from the photograph data there, it's right around the time they were sort of grading everything to start paving, because they did pave some of it before they actually built the foundations of the hotel. I believe that entire building there next to it is actually gone now too. Oh no, because that's the new building. That's not the good old building. That is a plaza, and that is still there. They also try to approximately color match the buildings, but sometimes it doesn't matches. Like the hospital here should be a much darker color. That's the Legion Hall again, not that kind of weird light lime green color. More, it's just a brick building, red brick. Let's see. But you can see some of the buildings you can tell by their shape when they're distinctive. Let's try and find some examples of that. There's the curling club building over there, which has the right approximate shape. The color again is wrong, because again, that's an older building, it's red brick. But the YMCA next to it doesn't really look like that at all. It's just kind of, the model for it's just kind of a square thing. That house that I'm kind of looking at right there is actually a water tower. But they got the color of the roof, the approximate color of the water tower. That would be the Loblaws down there, and that's actually the right color and approximately the right shape. As you can see, it's a little... Oh wait, no, that's not the Loblaws building. What building is that? that's the wrong size. It's not even the right side of the road. Is that the arena? Possibly. I know the town hall building is not represented really at all here. That's the Loblaws building, and it's the wrong color, wrong design. Again, when you're on some of the aircraft that tend to go higher, you don't really notice these details. But you'll also see some of the buildings are actually scaled incorrectly. You'll see like a 3-story apartment building put down to represent a building next to just a single floor house, and they're the same height. Because again, it's more not really intended for low flying. Since this is a simulator, most people would be flying, you know, in a way that would generally be considered legal. So you're not going to be flying 50 feet off the ground unless you're, you know, on an approach or a takeoff. So you generally don't see those details. It's sort of a good enough. But anyhow, there is, it's not called Jean Vanier anymore, it's like Our Lady of the Lake or something like that, a Catholic school, high school. Not necessarily representative. There is the other high school, Collingwood Collegiate. That one's actually fairly accurate with a few sort of kind of more bespoke details missing, like the library roof is wrong. But a lot of like the air conditioning units and, you know, other access areas and stuff like that is generally fairly accurate. And they even have the courtyard area, and that yellow building off the back of the track there is actually a bus shed and storage unit that doesn't exist anymore. They tore that down at some point. Coloring for this, a little bit off. But I mean, generally, like, you can kind of look at that and tell what that building is. That's another school there ahead, an elementary school. Oh, here's what I'm talking about. You can see these sort of pinkish buildings here. Those are actually red portables in real life, but they're being represented by miniaturized 2-floor apartment buildings. Again, once you get to a certain height, though, you don't really see that. In the ultralight, though, we're not really a high flyer, so you see more of it. You can see, you know, missing height data for a couple buildings over there. So there's a couple of apartment buildings there that aren't actually represented as apartment buildings, including ones here. There's some other buildings here. Man, this thing is really kind of subject to the wind. Like, again, it's not the headset, I guess. Whatever wind there is literally sort of pushing me on an angle. So I'm not flying straight unless I fly with or into the wind. There's another school, more portables. So again, this is where the photo data came from different time periods. This building here does not exist anymore. It was torn down. This is all open area here. It's just an empty lot. But if you look at the actual photograph data for this parking lot and stuff here, you can see the expansion building, the expansion that was added on to this building here, which is a Home Depot. It actually does exist in the photo data, which actually would extend out into this other building. So you can see that they started modeling, I don't know if it's because of the OpenStreetMaps modeling data that this building is still there, but they decided there's a building there, even though there's not anymore. Towards the ski resort. Why does this building have a helipad? I've seen that before. Yeah, this building has a helipad out back. And that's not something they added, that's from the satellite photo data. It's weird. Also weird that this parking lot has like a weird grass color to it. And it looks like the photogramming stuff can't tell whether or not it's a parking lot or grass. It's weird because if I want to go over to my left here, I kind of have to steer against the wind and just sort of let the wind sort of push me over towards it. I can't remember what they called it. This place used to be called Mayor's Mills, but I think the development went bankrupt or something and they changed the name. I think it's like Bull's Nest or some crap like that now. Plan data. Ooh. I would love to actually fly one of these things in real life on one hand. On the other hand, these things can be a little bit tricky, and I've heard a lot of sort of horror stories about these things. And I don't know if it's necessarily because, they're one of these things where they're not as regulated as highly as, things like Cessnas and stuff like that, and a lot of ultralights don't even require pilot's licenses. But so I'm wondering if it's just like a maintenance thing. Owners tend to neglect them a little bit. And this thing's basically a go-kart motor with a steel frame, and just some aircraft wire and some bolts from Home Depot. And there's your wiring harnesses right there. But I mean, the sort of open wheel, sit out in the open. Oh, by the way, even though this one does have brake calipers, they don't really do much. So landing in short roll is interesting. Okay, so I'm going to try and set this down and just kind of show, well, I'm not really going to show unless I screw it up, what I was saying earlier about the stall speed and the approach speed being very close to each other on this thing. I'm not going to say it's more difficult to land than, say, like an A320. It just sort of has its own little quirks. But you have to kind of commit, I would say. Like once you're... Because go-arounds ain't really happening. Uh-oh. That probably would have caused some damage IRL. Oh, nope, 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 nope. We're drifting. Okay. Gonna get this thing straightened out. Okay, why are we rolling backwards? Alright. Oh, this is bad. This is bad. This is bad. Recover. It may happen. What is going on with this thing? Like I said, the brakes don't really do anything. And we're kind of victim to whatever wind this is. You can pretty much take off vertically because the wind. Just gun the throttle and you just lift. Didn't even have to I didn't even have to rotate the stick. It just literally just picked us right up. So yeah, this thing is not something you want to fly in the wind, in windy conditions, because it will just push you around. Anyhow, let's try and land it at an airfield.
Toronto Center, Top Runner Aircraft Foxtrot. Juliet Alpha Charlie Foxtrot is type Top Runner Aircraft Top Runner 103 solo 8 miles northwest of Charlie November Yankee Tree 900 feet. Request flight following. Top Runner Aircraft Foxtrot. Juliet Alpha Charlie Foxtrot, Toronto Center. Squawk 6335. Squawk 6335, Top Runner Aircraft Alpha Charlie Foxtrot. Top Runner Aircraft Alpha Charlie Foxtrot, radar contact 8 miles northwest of Charlie November Yankee Tree 1,100 feet. Altimeter 29er decimal 9er 4. Core in air 249er, contact Toronto Center on 128 decimal 275.
Well, we'll have a tailwind coming back, it seems.
Roger, Top Runner Aircraft Alpha Charlie Foxtrot.
We're going with the wind now. This is going to be an interesting landing. With weather like this. Because we are going this way, but pointed this way. It was relatively easy to fly, not so great for landing. You know, I guess to land this, we're gonna have to do something that you can do usually in a bigger airliner, not so much in small planes. And that is we're gonna have to crab walk onto the runway, which means we're gonna come down at the angle that we're sort of at right now. And I'll be honest, I don't know if I can do this because it's not something I'm really qualified to do. Here to eyeball this stuff. Basically, we're going to kind of crab walk down right until we get right near the runway. And then we'll try and straighten it out so the wheels don't cause us to flip right over once we're solid on the ground. And then hope the wind doesn't like pick up the wing and flip us over. And then slowing down at all. I mean, we should still be okay to land, but it's gonna, since we're not going straight, it's gonna be a lot of runway. Gonna use it. Okay, we're slowing down, so we're gonna push the nose down a little. Okay, straighten her out. Cut the throttle. Whoa, 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 whoa. Keep it on. Keep both wheels on the ground. Alrighty. We are on the ground. Spin her around and taxi. Since we only taxiways like way up here. Oh, don't speed up so much, we lift off. Which is almost no speed at all. You know what? This thing can do it. Pretty sure in an actual one of these you'd probably just tow it into the friggin' hangar, because yeah, it starts to lift at like 15 knots. Well, this is going to take forever to taxi. You know what? I don't have to. I'm not going to bother. We're going to shut her down right here. And then position off, start engine off. Oh, it's not qualifying as a wait, what? Oh, that's right. Okay. 23 degrees. There we go. So we are on the ground and stopped. But it didn't go into my flight log. Probably because I didn't taxi. Anyhow.